There comes a time in every man's life when he has to make a difficult choice, not for revenge, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, and that choice is to walk away, not to teach her a lesson, but to teach yourself what you will no longer tolerate. You were the stability in the storm, the calm in the chaos, the one who always showed up when everything else was falling apart. You didn't just offer presence, you offered peace. The kind of peace that doesn't scream or demand attention, but quietly holds everything together when no one else knows how. That role, your role, is so deeply underestimated when it's always there. Because when you become her emotional anchor, her rock, her steady hand, it becomes easy for her to assume it's permanent. It becomes easy for her to believe that no matter what she does, you'll always be there, unshaken, unmoved, endlessly reliable. You see, your strength wasn't just in your ability to be stoic, it was in your restraint. You didn't react with emotional explosions. You didn't guilt her. You didn't manipulate. You simply absorbed. You stabilized. You gave her space to feel, space to fall apart, and still knew how to hold the line. That level of emotional discipline is rare, and it's powerful. But the tragedy is that most people only understand that power when it's gone. They only realize what they had when the one thing that made them feel safe disappears. Because stability isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or drama. It's quiet, steady, predictable in the best way. But the problem is people take predictable for granted. They confuse your calm for complacency, your patience for passivity, your silence for lack of emotion, and they begin to believe the lie that you're just there. Because you have nothing better to do, they assume your loyalty means you'll tolerate anything, that no matter how much they withdraw, criticize, or ignore, you'll stay planted like an unshakable tree. But trees can fall, foundations can crack. Even the strongest man can grow weary of being the only source of balance in a relationship that gives him none in return. And when you finally walk, when the man who always stayed chooses to leave, it's not loud. There's no screaming, no final argument, just a shift, a silence, a withdrawal of energy that once held everything in place. And that's when the storm begins. That's when she realizes that the very chaos she thought she could handle without you is now consuming her. That's when she understands that your presence wasn't just convenient, it was essential, because without you there's no calming voice when she spirals, no quiet strength to lean on when her world feels overwhelming, no one to read between the lines of her words and feel what she's not saying. The emotional buffer is gone, the warmth, the support, the grounded masculinity gone. All that's left is the space you once occupied and the echo of everything you were. And here's the truth, letting her feel that isn't cruelty, it's clarity, because she never paused to understand what your presence truly meant. She never really saw the emotional weight you carried just to keep things from breaking. So now she has to feel the absence. She has to feel what it's like to be without the stability she once ignored. Let her sit with it. Let her feel the weight. As long as you are present, available, giving and forgiving, your value becomes invisible. It's a paradox many men fall into without realizing it. The more you show up, the less you are noticed. Familiarity breeds comfort, yes, but it also breeds complacency. When someone is always there, consistently giving and forgiving, they become a background noise rather than the vibrant presence they truly are. Your value gets taken for granted, not because it's small, but because it's constant. It becomes the air she breathes, necessary but unnoticed until it's suddenly gone. Think about the times when people only start to appreciate something after it's been lost. The quiet friend you always leaned on, the family member who was always supportive, the partner who never left even when things were rough often. The true worth of these people only dawns on others after they're no longer around. That's the painful irony. Until absence makes the heart grow fonder, the value remains invisible, hidden beneath the complacency that constant presence creates. When you're always there, always ready to give her your time, your attention, your understanding, she stops seeing the effort behind it. She stops recognizing the sacrifice, the patience, the loyalty. Instead, she just expects it, assumes it will never change, never end. The safety net becomes invisible because it's always there. It's like water to a fish. She forgets how precious it is because it surrounds her at all times. But once you leave, once you create that space of absence, suddenly your presence is not a given anymore. The silence you leave behind speaks louder than words ever could. The emptiness where your support once was becomes a glaring reminder of what she took for granted. That's when she truly begins to appreciate the value of what she lost, not because you made a show of leaving, but simply because you stopped being there. It's important to understand this isn't about punishment or playing games. It's about the natural laws of human psychology and relationships. Presence is powerful, but it must be balanced with absence to maintain its value. Without absence, presence loses its power. Your value isn't measured by how much you give while you're there, it's measured by how much your absence is felt when you're gone. So if you want her to see your worth, sometimes you have to step back. Not to hurt her, but to remind her and yourself that your time, your energy, your loyalty are precious commodities. They are not unlimited resources to be drained without appreciation. Your value shines brightest not when you cling or chase, but when you create the space that only you can fill, and then choose to fill it or leave it empty. The power of absence is the greatest reminder of the true value of presence. When you remove yourself from her life, you leave her alone with her choices, her actions, and ultimately her conscience. There are no distractions, no excuses, no buffer zones left to soften the impact of what happened between you two. In that solitude, she is forced to confront the reality of how she treated you and what she may have taken for granted. It's easy to ignore or dismiss certain truths when someone is always there to pick up the pieces, to forgive, to explain, and to absorb the pain. But once you step away, all those cushions disappear. Suddenly, she is left with the raw, unfiltered consequences of her behavior and the space that your absence creates. This confrontation with herself is a powerful catalyst for introspection. Without your presence, she can no longer avoid asking the difficult questions. Why did he leave? Was I really as caring as I thought I was? Did I value him as much as he deserved? When you are constantly available, it's tempting for her to push uncomfortable feelings aside, blaming circumstances, stress, or external factors. But when you're gone, those distractions vanish. She can no longer shift the blame or hide behind your forgiveness. The silence you leave forces her to sit with her guilt, her regrets, and the realization that her actions have consequences. Sometimes this moment of solitude becomes a turning point for her growth, or at least the potential for it. When she is left alone with her thoughts, away from your influence and energy, she has the chance to truly see herself as she is. It's a mirror reflecting not just the mistakes, but also the deeper insecurities, fears, and patterns that led to the breakdown between you two. The pain of losing you becomes intertwined with the pain of self-recognition, a discomfort that many avoid but one that is necessary for real change. However, this process can only happen if you create the space for it. If you stay, constantly forgiving and coming back, you deny her the chance to face herself honestly. You become the emotional safety net she clings to, preventing the hard lessons she needs to learn. Letting go is not about punishment, but about giving her the responsibility to deal with her own emotions and decisions. It's about allowing her to experience the full weight of what losing you means, not just in terms of absence, but as a moment of reckoning with her own character and choices. This confrontation can be painful for her, yes, but it's also necessary if there is to be any real understanding or transformation. Without it, she may continue the same patterns, expecting the same forgiveness, taking the same loyalty for granted. But with it, there's the potential for awakening the possibility that she begins to see what she lost, not just in you, but in herself, and maybe, just maybe, that realization can lead to genuine change. Your worth was never measured by her recognition or approval. Too many men make the mistake of tying their value to how others, especially the people they care about, perceive or treat them. But true worth is intrinsic. It's not something given or taken away by external validation. You were never meant to chase after someone's approval or bend yourself into someone else's expectations just to feel worthy. Real strength and confidence come from knowing your value independently of anyone else's opinion. When you ground yourself in that truth, you free yourself from the need to prove yourself, to justify your actions, or to beg for love and attention. The painful reality is that many people will never fully see or appreciate what you bring to their lives. That's not a reflection of your shortcomings, but of their limitations. People see the world through their own filters, their own fears, insecurities, and biases, which can blind them to the true value right in front of them. You can pour your heart and soul into a relationship, show up with loyalty and consistency, and still be overlooked or underestimated. But that doesn't diminish your worth one bit. Your value exists independently of whether or not she chooses to acknowledge it. Too often, men get caught in the trap of trying harder, saying more, or doing more to gain recognition from the very person who fails to see them. This dynamic slowly erodes self-respect because it places your happiness and identity in someone else's hands. Instead, the path to true power is found in detachment from that need for recognition. When you stop measuring your worth by how she treats you, you reclaim your power. You walk away not because you want to hurt her, but because you recognize you deserve better not just in her eyes, but in your own. This kind of confidence is quiet, but unshakable. It doesn't boast or demand attention, because it knows its own value. Real men don't chase validation. They command respect simply by being themselves. They understand that respect is earned not through manipulation or desperation, but through integrity, boundaries, and self-respect. Staying where you are merely tolerated, where you have to constantly prove your worth, is a trap. True respect comes from being deeply valued, and if that's not happening, walking away is the strongest statement you can make. You don't need her approval to be whole or complete. You don't need her to recognize your worth for it to exist. Your value is something you carry quietly within yourself, unmovable and eternal. And when you finally stop seeking her validation, that's when you become truly free. She may or may not change, but that is not your responsibility. One of the hardest truths to accept in relationships is that no matter how much you want someone to grow or evolve, you cannot control their transformation. You can offer your support, your patience, your understanding, but true change has to come from within them. When you remove yourself from the situation, you create the space not only for your own healing, but also for her to confront her own path. Whether she chooses to walk it differently or stays rooted in the same patterns is entirely up to her. This realization is freeing because it releases you from the burden of trying to fix what was never yours to fix in the first place. Growth begins in separation because distance brings clarity. When you are deeply involved in a relationship, emotions can cloud judgment. You might overlook flaws or excuses, hoping for better days, believing in potential that remains unseen by the other person. But stepping away allows you to reconnect with yourself and your own needs. It's a moment to reflect on what you truly want and deserve, without the noise of unresolved conflict or emotional manipulation. Detachment is not about indifference. It's about preserving your peace and prioritizing your well-being. In that space, you can rebuild your strength. You can rediscover your purpose, your passions, and your values independent of her influence. Sometimes, staying in a relationship that drains you or diminishes your worth keeps you from evolving into the man you were always meant to be. Separation creates the fertile ground for personal growth where self-love, self-respect, and self-awareness take root and flourish. It's a chance to become whole again, to regain your confidence, and to reset your boundaries. When you leave, you send a clear message not just to her, but to yourself, that you will no longer settle for less than you deserve. That you recognize your own value and refuse to stay where it isn't fully honored. This is not about punishment or revenge. It's about self-preservation and integrity. You honor yourself by walking away from what no longer serves your growth, and in doing so, you create the conditions for a better future, whether that future includes her or not. Ultimately, detachment is one of the most honest and powerful acts of self-love. It's a statement that your peace matters more than the approval or presence of someone who failed to appreciate it. It's a step toward healing and reclaiming your life, and sometimes it's the catalyst that awakens not only you, but also her, if she is willing to face what she lost and grow from it. You don't need closure from her. The search for closure is one of the most common traps people fall into after a breakup or a painful separation. We want answers, explanations, apologies, some kind of final conversation that makes sense of the chaos and wounds left behind. But the truth is, closure is rarely found in someone else's words or actions. It's not something she owes you, nor is it something that will magically heal the pain or erase the memories. Real closure comes from within, from your own acceptance and understanding, not from her willingness to provide it. Waiting for her apology or explanation often keeps you stuck in the past, tethered to a hope that she will acknowledge what she lost or the hurt she caused. But people don't always change, and they don't always admit their faults. Sometimes they move on without looking back. Clinging to the need for her to make things right only prolongs your suffering and delays your freedom. It traps you in a cycle of resentment, disappointment, and dependence on her actions to dictate your emotional state. Your silence, your walking away with dignity and composure, speaks louder than any conversation ever could. When you leave without bitterness or begging, without lashing out or making demands, you demonstrate your strength and self-respect. You show that your worth does not hinge on her recognition or regret. That kind of quiet power is undeniable. It forces her to reckon with the reality of losing you without you having to say a single word. Sometimes the absence of noise is the most profound message. Closure is an inside job. It's about coming to terms with what happened, forgiving yourself for any mistakes, and making peace with the fact that some questions will remain unanswered. It's about understanding that your peace cannot depend on her willingness to provide it. When you own your story and reclaim your power, you no longer need her validation or closure to move forward. You create your own healing. Letting go with grace is the ultimate act of strength. It shows that you value yourself enough to walk away from pain and confusion, that you choose your own peace over the chaos of trying to fix something that is broken beyond repair. When you do this, you let her feel the weight of losing you not through words, but through your example, your refusal to be diminished, your refusal to settle, your refusal to chase what isn't meant for you. This silent departure is the loudest message you can send, and it carries a power that no apology or explanation ever could. Remember, letting her feel the weight of losing you isn't about punishment or pride, it's about honoring your own worth and protecting your peace. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in walking away with dignity, knowing that your absence speaks louder than any words ever could. When you value yourself enough to step back, you open the door to new possibilities, both for yourself and for her. Trust that what's truly meant for you will never require you to diminish who you are.